Alrighty. Beautiful. I need to find my script for my Bro Josh play.
Do you want to use my phone?
No, we're good. We're okay. I got it right here. Whoops, I just liked it. Joy, would you like me to use the updated one for the second one?
Yeah.
Okay.
The most recent one that I sent is the one.
And that's the accountability one, right? That's me apologizing.
Yeah, that's the second part.
Yeah, and so the first one is way up there, like one of the first ones, I think. Or...
Yeah, I updated your second part because the first one is really wordy.
Okay, so the first image.
I wonder if I can, let me try to unsend the ones that we're not using so they're not cluttering your stuff.
That's nice. That could be nice. Okay. I need to mute this. Hello.
It says that screen is muted.
Whoops.
Josh.
Turn sideways. I was, for some reason, I was getting sound out of it. Like I was hearing my voice come out of it. I wasn't, like, because I'm speaking out of this one. So I was, anyway. All right. Familia. Yeah.
Oops.
Good luck. Have fun. And, you know, we're all here for each other. You know, if you feel shaky and like, you know, if you need help, ask one of us, ask someone, be like, hey, like, can you help spark and jog my memory on like this topic too? Like, don't be afraid to like ask that kind of question, you know, like anything that you need to help you get into the flow. Once we get into the flow, everything's gonna feel a bit more natural. So, all right, here we go, guys. Ladies. Hello, everyone. If you're getting in here, we got a whole heap load of you. That's exciting. I know you're muted right now. That's the way it's going to be. We're just going to give it a few minutes to let folks file in here. If you have it in speaker view, you can see all of the panelists. If you have it in gallery view, you'll see all the panelists as well, except they'll just be on the top of the page. And like I said, we're just going to give it a few minutes before we fully get this thing going. You should see a poll on your screen. I don't know, as you guys just joined, if it's here, but it looks like a lot of you are viewing the questions here. There's a little bit of a poll. There's just 4 basic questions. And this is just for us to kind of see. This is just for us to see what our experience has been just in this realm in regards to feeling bullied or feeling unsafe in the community. And I guess I should have added another question here, but that's okay. We'll just roll with it. So take a second to fill out those couple questions. Grab some water if you would like to grab some water. Panelists, if you need to run to the bathroom really quick, we can run to the bathroom. And we are gonna get started here in like 2 minutes, right? 2 more minutes. This video, this meeting is being recorded with the intention to be shared with a wider audience. Thank you everyone for being here right now. That's really exciting to see that we have 55 of us in here right now. That's really exciting. Hopefully we'll be able to do more of these in the future with the goal of creating a more safe and impactful and inspiring community. And you know, that comes from people sharing their voice and us having conversations, and sometimes those conversations are uncomfortable. And today is going to be a little bit one of those uncomfortable conversations. So just as a disclaimer, this conversation does have discussion about sexual assault as well as personal experiences with SA. And if that's something that makes you feel uncomfortable, there will be a warning before that is shared. So you can, walk away from your screen or turn your volume down if you don't want to listen to it. It's not going to revolve completely around those stories. And this conversation is also not going to be talking directly about individuals or entities. We're here for the betterment of this community, and talking about just the perspective of these women on this panel, and listening to the women on this panel and their experiences in this community. So there's some people that'll probably keep filing in. I'm continuing to let people in here. So I'm going to give it another 60 seconds. We're probably going to have people file in as we go. So thank you for joining, everyone. It's nice to see everyone's face. I see a lot of familiar faces, some faces that I don't know yet, which is really beautiful. This community is a lot bigger than any one of us think it really is. And that's why it's important to have these conversations. Got the Terra shop tuning in. Much love, Canada. Love you guys. Well, with all that being said, I'm gonna be watching the chat. And again, just to reiterate before I pass it over here, this is a safe space, and there's going to be no verbal engagement with the panelists. We are going to be focusing on listening to the panelists and this presentation. And at the very end, we'll have an opportunity for Q&A in the chat. If for some reason there is hurtful language in the chat, like I'll be talking to you, and if it's something that is a consistent thing, like unfortunately, like you will be taken out of the Zoom room, because we want to make sure that this is a safe space, and then the people that are sharing, these ladies that are sharing, feel safe and not threatened in that space. And everyone should feel that way. The chat is a public space, and so this is not being broadcasted live. This is here with us all, but still I'll be watching the chat as best as I can. So that's enough from me. I want to say thank you again for being here. And we're hoping that this will probably be a little bit over an hour. And then the discussion points of Q&A would happen after that point. So take care of yourself. If you need to get up from your seat and use the bathroom, do what you need to do. And with that being said, I'm going to pass it over to AJ, and we're going to get this thing rolling. I am done talking.
Thank you, Joshua. Hello, everyone. I am really excited to see there's so many people in here. I appreciate you all for taking the time to do so. First of all, I want to thank Sweets and Kendama Institute for a space like this to have this conversation. I'm really excited about what this can mean going forward, and what is to come. So thank you for this space. And just a little bit about something you'll be hearing us say a lot, just in terms of us trying to be a little bit more mindful of each other. We're going to be saying, I'm done talking when we're done talking. So you'll hear us do that. Let's start with the objective of this call. The objective here today is to inform the community of ongoing issues within the Kendama fandom through a panel of non-male identifying members of the community. It is to provide some helpful tools and learnings that we ourselves have all utilized and learned from in our own lives, that have helped us to become more mindful of others whose experiences we don't understand either and we don't experience, in order to help us advocate for them. And finally, it's going to be, we're going to be presenting some actionable steps that we've come up with in order to foster an inclusive safe space and create more equitable community for everyone. We do want to make a note, all of us want to make a really important note about the male identifying members of the Kendama community, ones that are, we totally acknowledge that there are a large number of male identifying members in Kendama that are survivors of abuse, and also male identifying members that are advocates for survivors and advocates for inclusivity. So even though we are a non-male identifying group here today, we did want to give that shout out that we like see you and you've been a great help and we want you to be involved going forward. So please don't take that this is that we wanted to exclude you any way whatsoever. This is our shout out and big love to you. You are also amazing. So with that being said, I know Joshua already said this, but also this is a safe space, and we would like you to refrain from using hate speech or being unmindful. Please take this moment in this hour to listen intently, even if it's uncomfortable, even if you completely disagree at first, just sit with it. So let's start with intros. I guess I'll start because I'm doing all the talking right now. I'm AJ. My pronouns are she, her, and I've been playing Kendama for a little over 2 years now. I was first introduced to Kendama at NAKO. That was the first time I was given a Kendama. It's the first time I saw what it was about, but my background and my love of fandoms made me instantly want to be a part of it. I really love fandoms. I'm a part of the pro wrestling world. I moved to Korea to be a part of fandom life. Like I love anything where people create a community around something to feel a sense of belonging in the world that they otherwise don't. So Kendama immediately was something that I was drawn to. In the same breath though, my first introduction, my first weekend being around Kendama at NAKO, I experienced slurs being said. I experienced people saying things like Kendama slut and Kendama thought. And, I already knew from the get-go, again, I'm in pro wrestling, there's nothing new to this, that there was a problem here with people not being inclusive or mindful, and also with toxic positivity. So that is why, as much as I want to be a part of this community, I also am very critical of it. And so that is the role I would like to continue to play towards an actual positive future. And that is pretty much me. I'm done talking. So next we're going to hear an intro from Dan.
Hello. My name is Danielle. I also like Dan. Pronouns are she, her. I'm 25 years old, and Kendama has been like the first physical hobby that I've actually made progress in. I'm really prone to injury, and I've never gotten the chance to feel that accomplishment before. I've been playing for over a year, but got really involved in the community this February, and that gave my play a whole other level. Like when I land something new, my first thought is, no way. And then I can't wait to show my friends that I did this. And I just love that we can share that feeling. And I would like to feel comfortable to do so. So that's why I'm here today, and I'm done talking.
Thank you. And next we're going to hear from Joy.
Hi, my name is Joy, and my pronouns are she, her. I've been playing Kendama for a little over a year, and I'm not great at it, but I love it because you can really take it at your own pace. And I'm really not a competitive person, and I hate group sports or team sports and any type of thing where I have to be in a group to get something done. So I love that it's really an individual thing that I can still play in a community with other people. Yeah, that's why I love it. I love being able to take things at my own pace, and still people are so encouraging. And even if it's been 6 months and I land my first airplane, people are still like, whoa, that's so awesome. So it's definitely been an overall positive experience for me, but like everyone is saying, there's some issues that I would like to be addressed so I continue feeling comfortable being a part of this community and also inviting other people into the community. Yeah, I'm done talking.
Thanks, Joy. And now we're going to be introduced to Jackie.
Hello, my name is Jacqueline, and I also go by Jackie. I'm 29 years old. I got into Kendama back in college in 2013. A few of my close college friends introduced Kendama to me, and ever since I've been hooked. We even started a Kendama club in college, and that's where I learned more about the Kendama community. I still play Kendama till this day, and I still use it as I would say a therapy play or a healing mechanism. As an individual that struggle with anxiety, it truly does help me. It keeps me zen. It also helps me be more in tune with the present, and it's just good for my mental health. And yeah, I'm done talking.
Thank you, Jackie.
You're welcome.
It's okay. Next, we're going to be introduced to Cassie.
Hi, I'm Cassie. I'm 23 years old. Pronouns are she, her, and I got introduced to Kendama last January. So I've been playing for a little over a year. And my dad introduced me to it, but he introduced me to like the French version, right, without the cups, the Bill Bouquet. And then I found out about Kendama when I was in Minnesota, and I was like, oh, this is so much better. And so I was hooked ever since. And yeah, I'm done talking.
Thanks, Cassie. Now we're going to meet Jazz.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jasmine. I also go by Jazz. I'm 31. Probably out of all the panelists here tonight, I'm definitely the most novice to Kendama. I've only been playing for about a year. I was introduced to Kendama roughly last January from a friend of mine. I saw him playing with his, and I just was so interested and like intrigued by the ball in the cup toy, and asked him about it. And I eventually got my own in March, and I've been playing since then. My personal draw to the Kendama is the challenge for myself, and also the focus aspect. I've always been big into team sports, but to do something individually and to challenge myself in that way is definitely a lot of fun for me. And I also love like landing a trick I haven't landed before, or learning a new trick from somebody else is also another way I really enjoy Kendama. And I'm done talking. So thank you.
Thank you. And hi, Austin. Let's meet you.
Hi, my name is Austin. I use she, her pronouns. I got involved with Kendama a little over 3 years ago on my first date with Joshua. That was my first spike experience. And we've been playing ever since, and it's been a lot of fun. I think one thing that kept me very drawn to Kendama was I lack depth perception. So I'm very uncoordinated, but I've actually noticed significant improvement in my coordination since playing Kendama. So that's been exciting. And through Kendama Institute and just being involved with the community for the last 3 years, I've really seen how much of an opportunity Kendama has for growth mindset and mindfulness, and helping people connect to those things, and find that very inspiring, and really, yeah, hope that Kendama can stay in that field and continue to help people with those aspects, which is part of the reason I'm participating in this conversation today. And I'm done talking.
Thank you, everyone, for your intros. We're going to start with the first section. We're going to talk about controversy, and really we're going to talk about what all this is about, and something that is ingrained in the community and is a larger issue than most people, I think, realize. So to start us off, why we're talking about this is Joy is going to explain that.
Okay, so first off, we just want to kind of address why we're having this panel now. For those wondering, a lot of people have been asking the question, what's happening, what has happened that has sparked this conversation? Has something new gone on that I don't know about? No, not really. Nothing new specifically has happened recently that has sparked this reaction. It's been a conversation happening for a long time in this community, but has recently gained enough momentum to where a lot of brands have decided to make their stances clear and public pertaining to certain entities and people in the community. And we implore you to do your own research about those specific instances that were probably addressed in those posts. We also implore y'all to listen to the victims, and especially those belonging to marginalized groups who are telling you how these issues should be handled. On a more general note, we are going to be touching on a few topics pertaining to abuse, conversations surrounding abuse and abusers, and how these conversations have been handled in this community up until this point. from our perspective and how everyone can better handle them going forward. There's been an overarching air of dismissal within this community for a really long time when marginalized people speak on the issues pertaining specifically to their demographic, and that's not okay. For example, I understand that I will never fully understand or can speak to the experiences of people of color. The best way that I, as a white woman, can show up for the BIPOC community is first and foremost to listen, and then to be an advocate for them in the ways that they tell me to be an advocate. To be dismissive or combative when someone is speaking on their lived experiences or on those of their community is, for lack of a better term, it's just shitty. It's not helpful to anyone, because to ignore abuse that is happening is to enable abuse to continue. I have personally experienced a lot of dismissal in this community, and it's really hurtful. It's frustrating, and it's really disheartening, because we want to be here. We just need to have it be a better place to be. I love Kendama, and I want this to be something that I'm not only proud to be a part of, but that I feel comfortable inviting others into. And a lot of these issues and discussions get brushed off by people, saying that they're either not relevant to Kendama, which just isn't true. And Cassie is actually going to expand on that more in her section up next. And I'm done talking.
Yeah, so Cassie's going to connect to why this is very much about Kendama.
Okay. I'm really nervous, but I think this will be fine. So I guess one part of this whole kind of situation that I really wanted to address and talk about is the whole just play Dama thing, or right, the like, what does this have to do with Kendama question that I've been asked a lot lately. And I think the best way that I can explain it is that whenever you enter a space, you come in as yourself, right? You bring who you are, your identity, your past, your essence, everything into that space, whether it be in an event, a community, or even just a conversation. And so I feel like when people tell me like, Cassie, like just play Dama, why can't you just play Dama? They're assuming that Kendama is separate from all of these other things going on in life, which is just crazy to me, because these issues are all interrelated, right? Like these things don't just go away because we enter this supposed positive, encouraging space. And so for me, it's like, what kind of community are we creating if we leave those things behind just to play with this toy? So having entered the community like this summer, more like the online aspect, I was really like amazed to see how, you know, like this community is like a family. Everybody supports each other. Everybody encourages each other. They do giveaways, tournaments, all of that kind of stuff. And so when I look at a Kendama, I associate it with all the people, all the moments, all the values that we hold as a community to protect each other. And so when something like this happens, it's just so hard to just pick up a Kendama and play as if none of these things are connected. And so I feel like a lot of my guy friends, you know, tell me, oh, like I have an account just for Kendama, you know, where I just log on and I look at my Kendama videos and I, you know, like do that stuff. And why can't you do the same? And it's frustrating because that is what I'm trying to do. It really is, I swear. And it's like, again, it's frustrating because that harassment and the misogyny, like that follows us everywhere we go. And it's frustrating because when we do express our discomfort with certain individuals or behaviors within the community, it's just so disheartening to pick up this toy and be happy and just play with it when no one seems to care about what we care about. And so I really just kind of wanted to express how like that bro culture of like just play Dama is super damaging to people when serious issues like these are brought up. Like, I think we can all agree that Kendama is not just Kendama, right? Kendama is something everybody associates with something different. And so to ask people to just like compartmentalize can be super condescending and harmful. So yeah, I'm done talking.
That was amazing. Thank you, Cassie. So next up, this is a short trigger warning. The next part might be triggering for some people, and it is going to talk about sensitive topics. So we're gonna have a personal impact statement from Dan. Go ahead and take it away.
Thank you. I would just like to preface this by saying, due to the nature of this story, I will be reading this from words I've prepared, since I do not want to share more than I feel necessary or get caught up in it. Just to explain how experiences can follow you. Here we go. When I was 19, I experienced something after a work party that I was initially very confused about. But after replaying every moment in my head leading up to, during, and after, I knew I was raped. I just knew that I did not consent, I did not participate, and I was taken advantage of. I decided to sleep at the party because I lived far away, and when the assault started, I was asleep. And when I wasn't, I was pretending I still was to avoid any conflict. I was on a college campus when it happened, so fortunately, but also unfortunately, they were very prepared. And I was taken to an emergency room, met with a counselor, got an invasive kit performed on me, and then an officer came to take my statement. After telling him what happened with every detail I could think of, he told me it was not obvious and that I shouldn't bother pressing charges. And I immediately backed out of pressing the charges. And yeah, I ended up having to find a new job because my rapist worked with me. And I was jobless and saddled with a sizable hospital bill for not pressing charges, which I'd like to say is no longer the case in the US. You can go get your aftercare done without pressing charges for free, and they will keep it on file. And I encourage you to go as soon as you feel you are able to, if you ever experience something like this. But I had tried to get justice and do right by anyone that could happen to next. But my abuser got away with it, and I later found out he had done it before, and people around me had known, but it just wasn't talked about because it wasn't comfortable. And if your first thought hearing this story is that you need more details, you're already in the wrong mindset. And so trauma porn refers to people's fascination with hearing or seeing other people's pain and suffering. And that's what you're asking for when you ask for details. And it's not necessarily liking it, but just wanting to hear it or see it. That's all it needs to be. And it's heavy enough revealing your trauma, but to share every detail, to get dissected, magnified, and twisted to see if you're lying is even worse. And I was made to tell my story over and over again to my friends so they would know why I wouldn't want to be around this person. I was still put in the position of being in the same space as this person only a month later, and it sent me into a panic attack, one of the only ones I've ever experienced. And in response to my reaction, the host, my friend who had knowingly invited this person, responded with, "Is that still a thing?" And then I was the one asked to leave because I caused a scene, is what was told to me. And while most in attendance didn't agree with this, it really only takes one person, and it was his house. So this was almost worse than the assault itself and the dismissive officer. And that's why it's so important that we create safe spaces and we don't traumatize people all over again. Ignoring or minimizing someone's experience can lead them to do drastic things such as isolation, reckless behavior, self-harm, or even attempting to take their life. And 1 in 25 will complete it. And I'm done talking.
Thank you, Cassie. I mean, Dan, I really appreciate that, Dan. You did not have to share that, and you shouldn't have to share that, but I do appreciate you for doing it. I hope everyone here listens to what Dan is saying about trauma porn, and that asking for details is just not
acceptable. You should really believe women and survivors. Again, Dan, I really appreciate that. I know I've heard you say that before, but for some reason it hit me in a different way. So I really appreciate you. And it hit me in a way that I called you Cassie. So I apologize for doing that. Next up, and again, another trigger warning, if that is hard, if what you just heard is also difficult, feel free to step out for the next section. We're going to talk about consent and accountability in this section, and we're going to open with Austin, who's going to tell us a little bit about their personal experience and power dynamics that are involved with consent.
Hi, yeah. So I'm gonna begin by speaking about power dynamics in consent and how different power dynamics are at play and can make it challenging for certain people to say no in the middle of certain actions. So power dynamics are anytime that one person holds more power over another, and this can happen for a variety of reasons. In our patriarchal world, gender is a power dynamic where a man will have more power over a female or a non-binary person. Age is another power dynamic. Somebody older is going to have more power over somebody younger. Ability, intoxication, race, these are all power dynamics. And then another one is social capital. Somebody who's very popular, has a ton of friends, everybody likes them in a community, is going to have power over somebody who's new to a community or who doesn't have a lot of friends or support. I bring up power dynamics in regards to consent because due to these power imbalances, it's challenging to say no if you are the person who has less power. And I share a personal story that kind of demonstrates that in regards to saying no, like during sexual assault. I was in college and went over to this upperclassman's dorm room, and I thought we were just gonna watch Netflix and kind of hang out. And I was naive at that time. And anyways, I expressed to him that I didn't want to do anything sexual, and so we watched some TV, and I fell asleep. And I woke up to him pushing himself inside me. At this point, you would think, well, why didn't you just say no or stop or get up and leave? And the reason I couldn't do that was because of these power dynamics. I just froze, which is a common trauma response when your brain is overloaded and you don't know what to do. It was hard to say no because I was worried about the consequences of saying no, that it would turn the situation even worse. I didn't know if he was going to respond violently or make fun of me the next day in front of all his friends. He was very popular, or there'd be worse consequences if I tried to resist. So that's why it's challenging to say no. And we've been talking a lot about consent in terms of sexual activity, and that's not the only place that consent happens. Consent is like important. You just want to obtain consent. You don't want to pressure anybody into anything, and you need to be aware of these power dynamics so that you can avoid that. Because just because somebody isn't saying no, like there's all these other indications, body language, and pressure that can indicate that somebody's uncomfortable, and to not pressure them further. And then in regards to power dynamics, I'm going to talk about also different definitions of sexual assault. So often I've been noticing that there's a different definition of sexual assault by those who have power versus those who don't. I think in many cases, certain people, particularly men, think that sexual assault only happens where a man had a weapon or used violence to force another person to have sex with them. And the person who doesn't have power in these situations describe sexual assault as happening whenever they didn't feel comfortable, didn't have the ability to say no. So often the same interaction will be viewed by one person as sexual assault, and the other will dismiss it as, no, I didn't force her, I didn't use a weapon, so it wasn't sexual assault. And I think this is where a lot of the false accusation arguments kind of come from. I think in many cases, false accusations are believed to have happened because the person who did the action or those who heard about it didn't really view it as sexual assault because there wasn't violence or a weapon involved. And it was sexual assault from the perspective of the person who was harmed because they weren't able to say no because of one or various of the power dynamics at play that I talked about earlier. So that's to talk on the issue of kind of dismissing things as like false accusations and being over worried about that. And yes, occasionally false accusations happen, but often they're due to a different understanding of what sexual assault is. So these are just things to be aware of. Like I said, consent is not just in regards to sexual activities, but anytime that you're pressuring somebody into doing something, and just, don't pressure people into things. Like, you want everybody to be enthusiastic about anything that they're participating in. And that's why we've moved from saying like no means no to yes means yes. You need enthusiastic consent for sexual activities, for partying, drinking, drugs. Like, if you want to do that with other people, like, don't force it on them. Make sure everybody's comfortable and chill. So that's just what I wanted to share in light of the greater community and in light of some recent controversies that have happened. And I'm done talking.
Thank you, Austin. Again, I appreciate you as well sharing, and also for explaining the nuances to power dynamics, which is a hard one to explain and understand at first. But it is really important in all your interactions in life to understand the power you hold, the power other people hold, and how to better utilize your own power to advocate for others, and also see when other people are abusing their power. So that is a nuanced concept, and we're going to keep rolling with that idea. We're going to go into terminology, in a lot of the discourse that most people have been seeing with the recent situation, but all of the issues that arise within this community. There's a lot of discourse online, especially the past year and a half, and a lot of words are used that are more advanced and often are mocked. So we want to make sure that we're being clear about what those words mean. And Jazz is going to help us understand that. She has done an amazing job compiling them all. So we're going to go over terminology and examples of problematic things that we've seen. Go ahead, Jazz.
Hello again, everybody. I'm Jazz. I'm sure this document's being shared on your screens right now in one of the windows, but if not, the link can be sent to you later. Either you can DM me or we can arrange that later. But basically, I'm just going to go through a lot of terms that we've been using and will be continuing using over the course of this discussion. And so I'm just going to start with the first one, being accountability. Accountability is really important, especially considering everything that's been going on recently in the Kendama community. In terms of when you're harming somebody else, it is very important to take accountability. And so I just wanted to give a really good, clear definition of accountability and some resources to do some further research on that. So accountability is, as County Burke of the Northwest Network explains it, an internal resource for recognizing and readdressing the harms we cause to ourselves and others. It is a practice rather than an end. It is a continuous process rather than an individual act. And so I feel like that's something we really have to keep in mind when we want to be accountable to one another or accountable to another person, that it's not just one single thing, but a continual act. Basically, it involves the harm doers choosing to be responsible for their behavior and actions. And that's so important when you want to take accountability for either something you've done to somebody else or to somebody else. Following that is consent. And consent, in the most basic definition, occurs when one person voluntarily agrees to the proposal or desires of another person. And that comes from like a very basic Oxford English dictionary definition. But furthermore, when it comes to sexual consent, and this definition comes from the RAIN network, or the Rape, Abuse, Incest National Network. And I have links to all of this information on a document. Once again, if you need that, we can definitely get that to you later. But basically, sexual consent is an agreement between participants and to engage in sexual activity. Consent should be clearly and freely communicated, and those things are very important. But in addition to that, A verbal and affirmative expression of consent can help you and your partner both feel understand and respect each other's boundaries, but also consent cannot be given by individuals who are underage, intoxicated, incapacitated by drugs or alcohol, or asleep and unconscious. If somebody agrees to an activity under pressure or intimidation of threat, then that is not considered consent either. So these things are very important. When we talk about consent, you really have to be mindful that consent is freely given and enthusiastically given, but also in addition to that is can be freely revoked. And that's a respectability issue. If you respect somebody, they can freely say something and change their mind in a moment. And because we respect that person, we respect their choices as well. And once again, like I said, this information comes from the RAIN organization. Following that, we're going to talk about toxic masculinity, which is tied into rape and rape culture. And so in social sciences, toxic masculinity refers to the traditional culture of masculine norms that can be harmful to men, women, and society overall. This concept of toxic masculinity does not condemn the male or male attributes, but rather emphasizes harmful effects of conformity to certain traditional masculine ideals of behaviors, such as dominance, self-reliance, and competition. So basically, toxic masculinity does men a disservice to a certain degree because we are too focused on these ideals of dominance being self-reliant or not relying on the community, and also being overly competitive or not uplifting one another. And that can be very harmful to fostering community relations between men and women or non-binary people as well. Excuse me. And directly tied to that is the term being a rape apologist, or apologize or making excuses for rape. And I'll just read the definition. This once again could be triggering because of the terminology, but it's very important that we face this head on, because in order to better have these discussions in these spaces, we have to face that sometimes we have to talk about hard things. So rape apology is an umbrella term for arguments suggesting that rape is infrequent, misreported, overreported, or not that big of a deal, or excusable in some circumstances, such as marital rape, corrective rape, or if the victim was provocatively dressed or extremely drunk. A rape apology is the foundation for rape culture, which doesn't serve anybody in any community, and is expressed in several arguments, beliefs, and attitudes. Rape apologists also accuse survivors of speaking up solely to disgrace or ruin the reputation of the rapist. False allegations do occur, but only about 2% of the time. So it's just a small percentage. We cannot blanketly say that we cannot believe survivors, because it's more likely than not that we are creating a culture that we're not believing survivors because of, we're saying that thing didn't happen, and that does a disservice to the community overall. Yet when you believe that rape accusations are lodged mainly to disgrace the rapist, you invalidate the trauma of the victim. You prevent more survivors from speaking up for the fear that they'll be ridiculed, and you're allowed rapists to continue to live unscathed without consequences. And that's simply, something that part of being a community we cannot allow. And rape is very extreme, but even in terms of sexual assault and sexual abuse, or even in terms of racism, or other ableism, ageism, we cannot just sit and be a bystander. We have to speak up for one another at all times. But furthermore, we cannot treat rape, sexual assault, sexual abuse as a minor misunderstanding between two people, or an issue that can be brushed off. Taking responsibility of educating yourself and ourselves as a community about rape apology and how to dismantle rape culture is when we find ourselves in spaces. When we find ourselves in spaces to tolerate it. Finally, believe survivors of all genders, and desist from invalidating their experiences. One of the ways that we try to skirt the issue and having this discussion is toxic positivity. And toxic positivity stems from the idea that the best or the only way to cope with a bad situation is to put a positive spin on it and not dwell on the negative. This comes from Natalie Ditella, a clinical health psychologist with the Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston. It results in our tendency to undervalue negative emotional experiences and overvalue positive ones. Denying and minimizing or invalidating those feelings through external pressure or your own thoughts can be counterproductive or harmful. So to speak, looking on the bright side of things in the face of tragedy, of dire situations like illness, homelessness, food insecurity, unemployment, or racial injustice is just a privilege that not all of us have. So propagating messages of positivity denies a very real sense of despair and hopelessness that only serve to alienate and isolate those who are struggling. So basically that summarizes that being overly positive in the face of somebody saying like, hey, this is hurting me, or hey, this is making me feel uncomfortable, is basically minimizing and diminishing their experience. And once again, if we want to be members in a community and want to be uplifting one another, not even just in Kendama play, but also as community members, we cannot minimize or diminish anybody else's experience. Another way to do that is spiritual bypassing. And that definition is as follows: is using spiritual ideas and practices to sidestep personal, emotional, unfinished business to shore up a shaky sense of self and to belittle basic needs, feelings, and development tasks. So that's another way of saying, you know, toxic positivity, but also having the backing of a spiritual basis. And not to say that you cannot find healing in your own spirituality, but you cannot diminish somebody else's experience when they're sharing that with you, and you have to recognize that as well. Moving forward, I'm just going to talk about a couple things which I call bad faith discourse, and there are going to be some terms that fall under that umbrella, but generally speaking, I'm going to tell you the difference between good faith and bad faith arguments or discourse or discussion. So good faith argument or discussion is one in which both parties agree on terms on which they engage are honest and respectful of the person's dignity, following generally accepted norms of social interaction, and generally want to hear what the other person thinks and has to say. So that means you're coming from a place of really good intentions, like you're really trying to have a good faith discussion. You're trying your best to hear the person out, but also make sure you're being heard. In terms of bad faith discussion, it is one that one or more parties has a hidden agenda, unrevealed agenda, often to dominate or coerce the other individual into compliance or acquiesce of some sort, lacks some basic respect of rights, dignity, or autonomy of the other person. Disrespect of the other party may include dishonesty. The person engaged in a bad faith argument does not accept the other person as they are, but rather demands a change in order to satisfy the requirements or accept their will. So when you engage in bad faith discourse, which I've personally seen a lot of the times when we shore up like really difficult discussions in online spaces, sometimes these tactics, as much as you want to argue against that other point, you have to be mindful that overall we're a community, we should be working together, and so you shouldn't be arguing for argument's sake or trying to disprove somebody just because you don't like what they're saying. If you don't like what they're saying and it makes you uncomfortable, rather than trying to say that it's false, try to recognize where they're coming from and why it's making you uncomfortable. Just an example of bad faith discourse briefly is being a devil's advocate. A devil's advocate is to take on an opposing viewpoint and to raise an objection to claim merely for the sake of argument. You don't actually have to believe what you're saying when you raise these questions or objections. You're simply arguing in order to clarify issues or generate debate. Excuse me. Although using this tactic in discourse isn't inherently negative, arguing against a point or an opinion just for the sake of argument often derails the conversation and doesn't foster real communication between parties. And if we're trying to foster a sense of community in our space, one thing we cannot do is have just blatant arguments for argument's sake. That doesn't really solve any problems or help anybody in terms of discussion either. Another way people have bad faith discourse is using a straw man or straw person fallacy. And this occurs when, in attempting to refute another person's argument, you address only a weak or distorted version of that. A straw person is misrepresentation of the opponent's position or competitor's product to tout its own good argument or as superior. This fallacy occurs when the weakest version of the argument is attacked while the strong ones are ignored. So basically, when you're engaging in a straw person fallacy type of discussion, you're attacking the weakest point of what somebody's saying rather than hearing them out fully and having the discussion in what I like to call an earnest, like in real honesty or like real good faith. If you are only attacking their weaker points, then there's a way where you can foster real communication between two people because you're only focusing on how you can win, so to speak. And another way to engage in bad faith discourse is tone policing. And this is probably one of the things you've seen the most often, but I haven't actually been able to put like a word to or maybe address it. But it basically, tone policing has been described as when somebody, usually a person in privilege, in a conversation or situation about oppression, shifts the focus from the conversation, from the oppression being discussed to the way it's being discussed. Tone policing prioritizes the comfort of the privileged person in the situation over the oppression of the disadvantaged person. So over the course of our discussion tonight, we have, all of the parties involved have said that they've seen multiple times in their own personal experiences in which we've been trying to bring up a really difficult discussion, and people have told them that, well, I would hear you better if you didn't do X, Y, and Z, or if you didn't say it in this way, or if you didn't, make me uncomfortable when you're sharing your experience. And frankly, that's a form of tone policing. And it is okay to acknowledge that you may be uncomfortable by what somebody is saying, but you cannot tell them that I can't hear you or believe you, so to speak, because of the way you're saying that, and it makes me uncomfortable. So that's something you definitely have to keep in mind. And one way to do that is having emotional intelligence. And so the idea of emotional intelligence is having the capacity to be aware of, control, and express one's emotions and handle interpersonal relationships judiciously and empathetically. It is the capability of individuals to recognize their own emotions and those of others, discern between different feelings and label them appropriately, use emotional information to guide thinking and behavior, and adjust emotions to adapt to environments. So having emotional intelligence is very important when we have these very tense discussions, because once again, you have to recognize what makes you feel uncomfortable, what makes the other person feel uncomfortable. And before reacting from an emotional standpoint, you have to realize that I am reacting emotionally, and I need to check that within myself before I feel the need to shut them down or tell them that that's not my experience and so that they're wrong. Because personally, from my experience as a new Kendama player, I've seen a lot of times in which people have shut down conversations because it has made them uncomfortable. And I feel like having some emotional intelligence will definitely benefit the community overall, because we can have more open and honest communication between our members and not feeling like we're attacking one another. Because ultimately, we all want the same things. We want to have fun playing, this toy that we love in a fun, safe space. And so that's one thing we have to be mindful of. I do have some links at the bottom of my document. Once again, this will be shared later. And thank you for your time. And I'm done talking.
I feel like this in the chat is just necessary. Like, that was so much. Thank you so much, Jazz. That was amazing. I see all the clicky clackies. Thank you. Yeah, that was, I hope that was really expansive, and I hope that you learned something you didn't previously know, or you heard something from a different perspective. I just learned to say straw people argument instead. I hadn't even thought of that. So we're all learning here. Thank you again, Jazz. That was amazing. So rolling with the ideas of power dynamics and how that plays into using bad faith arguments, we're going to now talk about what that looks like. And we're going to do that. We're going to be shown an example of how to not take accountability and what a fake apology looks like from our not one and only bro, Josh. So Joy and Bro Josh are going to show us what not true accountability looks like.
Okay, so I'm going to do a little intro before we do this little example. This has kind of already been covered, but I just want to reiterate something that's really important to address in this conversation is accountability and how best to take accountability and genuinely apologize and do better when you mess up, which we all do. Even personally, I have a history of being a very combative person, and I have struggled heavily with reactive defensiveness in my life when I've been confronted with something that I did wrong by someone else. And I've had to have multiple people, both close to me and just randos on the internet, call me out for it, for me to like understand that I really need to sit with myself and like analyze my behavior and why I react this way and why it's so self-destructive and unproductive. Combativeness and defensiveness also very often translate to what we are referring to now as fake apologies, or not genuine apologies. So to illustrate what defensiveness or a fake apology might sound like, me and Josh are gonna play out a little interaction where this might happen.
Yo, hey, you want to play some Kendama?
Yeah, that sounds like fun. Let's play.
Tight. Let's go. Oh. Man, you play like a girl.
That's pretty rude.
Dang. Can't you just take a joke?
I can take a joke, but that was just flat out sexist.
I'm sorry you feel that way. That's not even what I meant at all. Now I'm a sexist because I made a joke and you're coming at me for no reason.
So that is a type of interaction that I have personally encountered in this community, and I think pretty accurately demonstrates a common level of defensiveness when basically being told something you said or did wasn't okay. And next, we're going to have AJ explain some steps on what real accountability looks like and how they can translate to a genuine apology. So take it away, AJ. I'm done talking.
Right. So the way I've discovered taking true accountability in my life and has helped me, because like Joy was saying, I've also had extreme problems with defensiveness and reactiveness. So learning how to engage empathy with others and take true accountability when I mess up, which is inevitable when you have a mouth like mine, is super important. So there are 4 steps that I found really, really help me. The first and foremost is to actually listen to what's being said. Hearing the other person from a place of empathy where you're trying to be understanding of where they're coming from and what the power dynamics are there again, is going to really help you to understand and inform how you should respond. So really listening as opposed to just being defensive about someone coming at you saying that you've done something wrong. Oh, we've moved. Oh, is that supposed to be on the screen? Okay, next up, second is to actually acknowledge what they're saying, is to see the impact that your actions had in that situation, and that to see that maybe they didn't match your intentions, but that's the impact that they had. Now, this is a bigger concept that I implore all of you to go and do research on, or Google impact versus intent is super important in general and helped me a ton in my life. But basically what happens a lot of times, and you kind of heard Bro Josh talk about this, is giving excuses or what your real intentions were in the situation, that you just meant it as a joke and like that's not how you meant it. Those are your intentions. And the more you only focus on that and not the impact it had on someone else, those intentions really just turn into excuses, because really impact is far more important than whatever your intentions were. And you want to make sure that you make those align. And it's actually super easy to just acknowledge, you know what, that I see that that's how it impacted you. It's not what I intended, but I see that it impacted you. So basically to put more focus on the impact versus, you can still express your intention, but to not focus on only your intention, which basically dismisses how it affected the other person. That was step 2. Step 3 is to offer solutions. So to prove that you've listened and you've acknowledged and thought about it, you want to vocalize the ways in which you plan to change your behavior going forward. It can be as simple as just saying like, I will make sure to not say that to you. You're a person, you're not just a gender. I'm not going to use gendered language to you. I'm not going to be offensive to you about the way you play kendama. I will make sure to just be more mindful in the future and not say stuff like that. I wasn't thinking about how you would take it. And then the last step, the fourth step, is to actually put those solutions into action and to do what you say you're going to do going forward. It doesn't mean anything if you don't actually do it. So we are going to see what all of those 4 steps actually look like in action. Go ahead, not Bro Joshua and Joy.
Oh, hey, what's up? Hey, you want to play some kendama?
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool. Right on. Dang, you kind of play like a girl.
That's rude.
Oof, that's totally my bad. I hear you, and I was just trying to make a silly joke, but I can definitely understand how that was hurtful. Thank you for being straightforward with me, so that I can be more mindful and respectful going forward. Again, I'm sorry for saying that. Would you still like to play kendama now?
Yeah, totally. Thank you. I really appreciate that. That I believe you, and that definitely seemed like a real genuine apology. So yeah, we're good.
Cool. All right. Right on. How long have you been playing kendama?
Just a little while, like a year.
I am done talking.
And scene, and you're done talking. Great. Thank you for that. And Joshua brought up another great point that I didn't add for the first step. It's also great to just thank people for letting you know, because a lot of times people don't let you know that you've insulted them. They'll just like kick you out of their life. So it's good to thank them. So just to go over that again, to take accountability, you want to listen, acknowledge, offer solutions, and take action. Those are the 4 steps to true accountability and also just a real apology. So if you're in a relationship, these are skills. You need to learn them. So that is accountability. And next up, we're going to roll right into something that is also an important step to be able to take accountability. And that is the idea of mindfulness and empathy. And Jackie is going to explain those to us.
Okay, so mindfulness, also known as non-judgmental awareness, it can be a part within yourself or how you react towards others. Although not many people practice mindfulness, it can definitely be learned. It teaches people to become more aware with their surroundings and environment in regards to interacting or engaging with other people while partaking in hard and heavy conversations. For example, when you engage in a discussion that shouldn't be taken lightly, you must be mindful with what you say and be mindful with whom you're talking to, because you don't know the other person or what's going on behind closed doors. You could be talking to someone who is a trauma survivor, survivors of sexual assault, rape, physical abuse. Also, mind you, there are other traumas that many people do experience in life and shouldn't be excluded in this discussion as well. So that's mindfulness. Next one is empathy. And I do say that mindfulness and empathy do coexist with each other. And empathy is the ability to put yourself in another person's shoes and understand their perspectives of things. For instance, being aware of their feelings, emotions, and see no judgments towards it. Individuals who tend to voice out their feelings on heavy topics, they're likely to get comments, on the opposing side, which is likely to show lack of empathy or respect. And majority of the time, those who voice out their feelings seek empathy rather than sympathy, which I've also noticed too when individuals were trying to voice out their feelings when things were resurfacing online. So yeah, I'm done talking.
Great, thank you for that, Jackie.
You're welcome.
All right, next up, we're going to use the idea of mindfulness and empathy, and we're going to talk about how engaging all of the things we've learned thus far can really show us that change is possible and that all of these skills are required for change to happen. But I think we all here believe that it's possible, and that's why we're all here listening and all here talking. So to speak more to that is Austin.
Yeah, it's really exciting how many people have showed up to this Zoom call tonight. We really, as a panel, had no idea how many it might be, but our hope was that this would reach as many people as possible so that we can collectively make the Kendama community more welcoming and inclusive for as many as possible, and just keep it being this like really awesome thing that it is. And so, yeah, I just wanted to reiterate that change is possible, and change starts by like the community that you're part of. In this case, we're all part of the Kendama community. So this is our opportunity to make change. And that will create a ripple effect moving forward throughout the world and slowly create that change that we want to see. So it's exciting that we're all like about participating in that. And then the other thing just to touch on is like, we're all about growth mindset here. We're putting on this Zoom call for the sake of education. And yeah, everybody has teachers in their lives. Everybody on this panel has had people who taught them things that they didn't know and helped us start to see things in a different way and stop saying things or doing things that were problematic. And I say this to ease the fear that maybe some people have that we're going to bite your head off if you say something problematic or wrong. No, like if you have a growth mindset, if you're willing to change your mind and you genuinely have a question that you ask in good faith, like we're about that. We're about helping you see different perspectives so that it can be a better place for all. I think recently we've all seen an example where somebody said and did very problematic things in this community and then offered a fake image saving apology, and there were consequences. That's not the energy we want here. And then there's also been another recent example of somebody in good faith trying to be helpful said something that ended up being problematic, and then learned about that action, took the time to learn and hear why it was problematic, and then did all the steps of accountability. And because of that, that person is seen all the more honorable and respectable for doing that. And that's what we're about here, is like, so don't be afraid, I guess, in the question and answer or moving forward, if you're still sitting with something and not quite understanding it, to bring it up with us on the panel or somebody else in your life, because we're not here to bite your head off. If you go into your question willing to change your mind, like that's what we're looking for, and we'll have that discussion. So yeah, I do invite that later. We will have a question and answer opportunity. But yeah, anyways, I'm just glad that we're all working towards making things better. And I think there is going to be a lot of change that comes from this. I'm done talking.
Thank you, Austin. Yes, I think that is something that gets lost a lot. It's a really important thing to add about what it really looks like, and to take accountability and with a growth mindset, and to not be afraid. Because I was making faces when Austin was saying some things about, we're not going to bite your head off. We're not going to bite your head off if you say things in good faith. Like, I make no promises about the other thing. Because sometimes you deserve it, and sometimes that's how you learn. I've learned through getting called out about things, sitting with it uncomfortably and realizing there was a point, and if someone had said it nice to me, I'm not sure I would have gotten it. But when you make a mistake and it's so clear that you're willing to listen and hear why, the response is night and day. So I do like that Austin added that, and I hope people hear that, because it is true, despite what you often think, what you might think. So we've reached the last section, which is wild to me. We've covered so much. So we're going to talk about the action steps now. This is the exciting part. We're going to talk about what Kendama ethics moving forward can look like. I know Joshua has spoken a lot about other communities that have ethics, and I think he will do so again later. So I'm not going to repeat that or say it not as well as he's going to shortly. But this is about what Kendama ethics look like and the actions that we can take moving forward. And I'm going to keep talking because it's my section again. So concrete actions. What we all want is a safe space, but I think that is thrown around and people don't know what that means. People also like to say we want an inclusive space. I think it's important to understand that inclusivity is about safe space. I have heard a few things here and there about, you can't be inclusive if you're excluding people, even if they were deemed bad by the community, but you can. That's actually what inclusivity is. It's being aware of everyone and making a space that's safe for everyone, which means you can't have people in the space that make others feel unsafe. So I just wanted to point out that, like, instead of inclusivity, when you hear that word, really think about what it is to create a safe space. And that's what our goal is. And that looks like a bunch of things. And it's something that's still evolving, which is really exciting. The first and foremost thing that have been talking about is at events having a decompression space. In my head, it looks like a room that has a minimum amount of people at a time that are allowed to be in there. The lights are low. There's like bean bags. I don't know, there's chill vibes, lo-fi music on. So if you get overwhelmed at an event, you can chill, you can go there. There would be people sitting outside at a table, like manning the room. They would also be resources for you if you needed to come talk to anyone about anything that's going on, so that you did feel that there was a space you could go to be alone or quiet, and also go to speak to someone who would advocate for you. So that's one thing that we've been talking about, which is really exciting to me. And the second is that same room or other places at events. We could hold workshops and discussions. We could also do more digital ones. And those workshops can be about a lot of things. I think one of the main things they need to be about moving forward is the idea of, if you see something, say something. It's the idea that, and this goes all the way back to Cassie talking about bro culture, and the idea that, if people are often complicit in things, even if they're not the ones doing it. They're often not speaking up about things they see being said because someone, or the person they were saying it about, or if it was a derogatory comment towards a group, that group or that person wasn't present, so they don't say anything about it. And those are the moments that you need to assess your the power dynamics of the situation. If you are privy to that information in that conversation, you have the power to shut it down. And that person will likely respect you enough, because they don't respect people they're talking about, to listen to you and feel shame over it. And those are the moments that you actually need to really say something, not just if someone is being harmed in the moment, but literally if someone is just making an offhand comment or doing anything problematic, and you realize, like, oh, it won't, like right now it's not directly harming someone. Doesn't matter. You need to make sure that you yourself are not complicit. And so these are the concepts and the things we need to really ingrain into the rest of the community, that it is all of our responsibilities to feel a sense of pride in standing up and advocating for everyone else. And I think that's the real positivity that Kendama fam wants to be about. So those concrete actions, fun rooms, but also discussions, and really ingraining this idea that if we're a family, we're going to have to advocate for each other, are some of the concrete steps that I would love to see, and I think we would all love to see. Similarly, to say, if you see something, say something, Jackie is gonna talk to us a little bit about bystander effect, which totally goes into that.
Okay, thank you. So bystander effect occurs when an individual or individuals act calm or nonchalant during an emergency or serious situations, and act like nothing is wrong. These serious situations can be like any crime that may be assault, harassment, or bullying of any sort. Although this may usually happen in person, but connecting this towards the social media aspect of it all, especially since the Kendama community is widely huge on Instagram, I see it being more prominent, seeing bystander effect more prominent. And I feel like the solution to this is, if you see something, say something. Yeah, I'm done talking.
Perfect. Exactly. Even when you're in a group, that's a really important thing to point out, that it's sometimes hard when you're with a group of people because you think someone else will do it, especially if you're not someone who's prone to confrontation. I mean, I can't relate, but there are a lot of people are like that. So you need to make sure that you're not being victim to bystander effect, which is super common and understandable, but we have to work to be better for everyone. And now we are going to go into Cassie talking about something very similar, and that's men doing work regarding accountability and how they can be better, and similarly, but in more depth, about something I've just kind of touched on.
Okay, I don't have too much prepared for this, but I guess just speaking from experience, like AJ said, I think guys in this community listen to their friends more than they listen to just some girls or some women or whoever, whatever minority we're talking about. So please, if you're a guy, please just like hold your friends accountable. Just talk to them, have a conversation, because a lot of the time they are more willing to listen to you than they are willing to listen to us. And so for me, it's just so important because, you know, like AJ was saying, it's just this idea that you're just complicit. Like if you don't say anything, yeah, I'm going to assume you're defending your bro, and that sucks. Like it just sucks. And so it's really important that everyone, especially the guys, hold their friends accountable. Even if you're just talking, even if you just say, hey, yo, like that wasn't cool, like, because you guys listen to each other, like you look up to each other. And so, you know, it means a lot when I hear or when I see guys standing up for us in that way, or just kind of having those conversations and you know, being uncomfortable for us almost to kind of, you know, be like, hey, dude, like that wasn't cool. I don't want to be your friend if you're doing that. And yeah, I'm done talking.
Thank you, Cassie. That was great. Sorry, I definitely like rolled through your section. My bad. But what you're saying is very, very valid. Next up, Jazz is going to talk to us about sportsmanship, which is still very much related and brings it back to Kendama. Go for it.
Yeah, so I just wanted to recenter, well, not recenter, but definitely focus on sportsmanship in terms of Kendama. If we are trying to grow this activity into a sport in a level in which we are competing continually and having regulations, we definitely have to have sportsmanship at the forefront, because we want to cultivate a safe space for everybody to compete in and have fun in. So the four main principles when it comes to sportsmanship is, if you lose, don't make excuses, which everybody feels like. I feel like that's something that a lot of us already have come to terms with. If you lose, if you don't do your best, you don't make excuses. You accept that as a chance to improve in the future. And if you win, you don't rub it in, because nobody likes a sore loser, but nobody likes a sore winner as well. Nobody wants somebody who's over arrogant, unhumble, and just makes the whole act of competing against them uncomfortable. So you definitely don't want to rub it in if you're winning. Basically, learning from your mistakes is also a good principle. If you do make mistakes, you rebound, you don't get slumped into that negative mindset, and always doing your best. Moving forward in terms of putting those ideals into practice, we want to avoid arguments in competitive spaces. Maybe I've seen, like I said, I'm really new to Kendama myself, so I haven't been to any competitions, but I have seen people be a little bit maybe overcritical in online spaces when people post videos that other people are excited about, and they're like, oh, you could have done this better. And like, I feel like that kind of lends itself to sportsmanship, because somebody could be really excited about posting something online and they didn't ask for advice. So don't necessarily give it. Like sometimes that could be seen as overreaching. Like, I know you're excited about that person and want to help them do better sometimes, but always offer advice or give help when it's asked for. And that's always the best way to handle that type of situation. Another way is to always keep in mind that everybody should have an opportunity to play. The one thing I love about Kendama is it really does allow you to, you know, achieve something in ways that you like. I feel like it's really accessible to a lot of people is basically what I'm saying. Like anybody can Kendama as long as you have use of your arms and your hands. And then maybe like maybe I'm wrong. I personally haven't seen, but maybe there are other ways to play the Kendama where you don't need your arms and your hands. But I feel like it's accessible to a lot of people, and that is a culture or a vibe that we're trying to like cultivate. Like this is something that anybody can do and everybody can do. and you can do it as well as you want to, or like you can do it as simply as you want to, and it's all about having fun. So definitely keeping in mind that we're creating space for everybody and not just, the best player or the best trick, the person with the best long string tricks or the best cup. Like, we want to make space for everybody in this sport. Ultimately playing fair, which I feel like most people wouldn't have arguments about, being being open to teaching other people, I feel like is a way of playing fair. Like, if you learn something and you feel really excited about it, I feel like sharing that information is always a new way to bring people in or to bring people together. One of my favorite things is learning a new trick for somebody else. So like, playing fair, being fair to one another is always like, sharing, indulging, and like pushing one another. And basically, ultimately, encouraging other players in the sport and making sure that we're making space for people to feel comfortable so they can showcase their talents, but also making sure that we are making space for people to even want to try. I don't see a lot of people like me playing kendama and the spaces that I play kendama in. So I'm just trying to make space for more people like me to feel comfortable. And ultimately, I just want everybody to come into this and feel comfortable and have fun playing together, but also feel respected and feel supported and feel protected. And I'm done talking. Thank you.
Thank you, Jazz. Yes, I think that's really important that we're tying it all back into kendama and how all of these things, okay, more clicky clackies, we're doing it? Okay. We're really, all of these things that we are talking about really come down to just making the sport and the fandom that much stronger and better. So, we started out talking about the controversy, why we're doing this call, what prompted it really, really covering like the specific area that prompted this discussion today. And then we went into, how to really break that down. And we talked about terminology and what consent looks like. And then broader terminology that plays into just how to engage with each other and how to be mindful and empathetic and how to create a better, safer environment. And then we discussed what that looks like going forward in concrete ways and how we all can assess and adjust our own behaviors and what spaces look like and events look like going forward, what online forums can look like going forward, and how we're all a part of that. So next, we are going to close out with Mr. Joshua and talk about what Kendama Ethics going forward in an even more concrete way can look like.
Well, thank you to all of you for sharing that. And I do want to kind of open it up in a minute here for some Q&A. And before I jump into Kendama Ethics, just in regards to kind of talk about like those action steps, we have the process of taking accountability is like kind of acknowledging, listening, acknowledge, offering solutions, and then taking action, right? And that's why this call is here, is because this is the easiest and simplest way that we can start taking action, I believe, as a community. First step of just listening, kind of acknowledging where we're at, what we've done, and then what we're about to, try to start doing is offering solutions, and then moving forward, like taking action, right? And something that kind of like is a pretty I think easy way that we can do that is a code of conduct. Before we even talk about Kendama Ethics as an overarching just like community like values, like a code of conduct just at events. And we can only help manage events that we hold space for. We by no means can control the world. We're not trying to control the world, and it's up to us to implement a code of just acknowledgements that we hold at our event spaces, and something that we're going to be working towards creating. And this is an intention of making it so that the companies are aware and agree upon the code of conduct at the events that their players are going to be participating in, as well as any and all of the players or spectators that are attending our events being able to verbally read and hear this code of conduct. And perhaps there is a little brief video of this code of conduct that you see just to remind ourselves of what these things are. It's something that can be as easy as if you see someone maybe bullying someone or pressuring them into something, and you've referencing back to this video, you can talk to your guy friend, like you can stand up and be that voice, be like, hey, you know, like this isn't cool, like we need to, you know, make this known that this isn't okay. We need to speak out in our group. And it comes down to communication. Communication is key, and communication is uncomfortable, especially when we're not used to doing it. You get anxious, there's adrenaline, and you have to kind of jump into this space where you're putting yourself in a space of vulnerability. That's why it's scary. That's why it's afraid, a space of being afraid, especially as maybe a male player talking to other group of male players. You don't want to be looked as like we talked about power dynamics. You're going to be putting yourself at the lower end of that potential power scale. You're putting yourself in a vulnerable space, being that one person acknowledging something. But that's important, and that's why we're here talking about that. Some things that we have just drafted out, there's nothing in stone for a code of conduct, is just and this is something we've tried and worked towards in the past, is keeping a family friendly space. You know, moving forward, just making sure that it's language friendly and music friendly in all common spaces of the event, right? We can't control everything in regards to the outer properties, but we can control as best we can within the event space. So family friendly in that way, and making sure that, you know, we set positive boundaries for that. And what does that look like? You know, like no belligerent activities just in the common space. I talked to a good friend in Shanghai, China, for 2 hours this morning, and the scene is growing a lot out there, and it's really beautiful. And he said, you know, there's actually not almost any drinking at these kendama events. Afterwards, they all go out and party so hard. But at that space, there's this like sense of respect. And I know that's just not in our culture. Like we're conditioned at this point to be drinking a beer potentially before our run on stage because it helps us calm down or whatever that is. But just as a perspective of different communities that are developing, something moving forward in our event space is just no belligerent activities in these spaces. You know, no sexual activity or focusing on being sexually arousing or the intent to be sexually arousing. Those are all things that as coordinators, hopefully, like I said, this isn't in concrete. These are ideas that will be discussed. Hopefully that is something that we can move forward, and that's something that's pretty like straightforward, agreeable. And that's something that I'd love to hear potential input on as well. But as of now, that's moving forward. Like in my mind, that's a way that we can take action of being accountable in our own spaces to help create a safe environment, a safe feeling environment. And then moving into Kendama Ethics, this kind of hit me in the face this last week. What are our ethics? You know, the Japan Kendama Association really has established an ethic, I believe, of, you know, never rush, never panic, never give up. They talk about what Kendama Do is. Do really means the way. You have Aikido, Judo. Kendama Do is the way of Kendama. And I'm not saying that we need to be the Japan Kendama Association. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just acknowledging the fact that, you know, what does the way of Kendama, what does Kendama ethics mean to you? What has Kendama helped bring to awareness in your experience? What have you learned from Kendama? What do you hold? What do you hold strongly with Kendama? And climbing, hiking, leave no trace. You go out into nature. That's a common known ethic of going out into nature, is leaving no trace. Even in surfing, skating, snowboarding, you respect the right of way. You don't snake. You don't just cut someone off. There's a general respect. I think respect is an overarching thing in that regards. And this is something that potentially we'll open up to some Q&A in the chat here of your thoughts. I don't want to ramble in regards to all of this, but moving down on this list here really quick, there are resources and links for everything that we talked about. I did post in the chat here the terminology that Jazz did such a great job of laying out for everyone. I really encourage all of us to just go back through that and read it. Click on those links. Jazz spent a lot of time making sure that she didn't just put a definition off some random article. You know, she really was looking for scholarly definitions of these terms. She put a lot of time into that space. Does anyone on the panel, before I go any further, want to tap out before we kind of tap into a Q&A space? No? Okay. Well, I would love to give a huge clack to everyone that A, is here, and B, was so vulnerable and brave speaking on the panel. I think that's huge. We've been here for a little bit over an hour. I really appreciate all of you being in this space. So